Welcome back. Safety in real estate. We've talked safety. I mean, personal head injury is certainly something that we have never covered, and it's fun to cover some different topics. Financial safety is something we do talk about, but, being safe in real estate is something we try to wrap our head around, and it's so difficult in what can be a volatile time. George Beasley joins us with broker with residentialseattle.com, who's on track for another banner year as a top producer and garnered the coveted 5-star award from Seattle Magazine. Welcome, George.
Thank you so much, Ben.
How are you today?
Doing real good, thanks.
Good. You talked a little bit before we came on about working mostly with buyers and kind of helping them understand this process.
Yeah, you touched on something that's really kind of important to me, and that's the whole safe factor with real estate. And this is probably where I start my conversation with all my buyers. But I want to preface everything I say by saying that this is a buyer's market, and if you can afford to buy a home, you should, but take precautions in doing so. With buyers, I get them often. They come into my office, they sit down with stars in their eyes, and they say, "I'm going to buy a house," and they have this thought in their mind that it's a buyer's market. They're not going to have any issues finding the right house. It's going to be a quick process, and anything could be further than the truth. So. That's where I really have to step in and kind of now set some expectations to create a safe and successful outcome.
And, I mean, helping people really understand what it means to be a buyer in this arena. I mean, from the mortgage standpoint, certainly we try to help people be safe by not overextending themselves.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, too, because I actually include that in my talking points as well, because the last thing you want to do is be house poor in this economy.
And it'll come back to bite everybody. I mean, it'll make for a horrible relationship down the road. Talk a little bit about, if once people have decided to buy.
Yeah, sure. If you look at the market the way it is right now, it would appear to be this perfect storm for buyers. It should be just a great experience for them. But you've got prices which are way down, and that's a great experience for buyers. Prices are at levels of 2004, 2005. That sounds like it should be relatively safe to buy a house right now. You can't go wrong. You can. Interest rates are crazy low. That's a great situation, and they won't remain that way forever. And if you have a down payment, a job, and decent credit, you can certainly get a loan. And that's a concern for buyers, but they certainly can. But where you really have kind of the minefield in this market is the inventory, and this is where it really gets dicey.
When people are looking for inventory, I mean, I think, we've talked at length about real estate. Of course, it's a real estate show. But when you talk about the inventory, and it seems to me that everything is a perfect storm, except for the fact that maybe the perfect house isn't there.
Yeah, this is so true. And I so routinely have to educate buyers to this level of patience it's going to take to find that perfect home. And it's like they have the first 3 rules of real estate is location, location, location. And I'm going to amend that. I'm going to write an addendum, if you will, for that. It's going to be patient, be patient, be patient. Because the last thing I want to see any buyer do is hurt himself by rushing into this market, not be educated, not know when they see a good deal, not really know the market well enough to make a really smart decision. So that's where patience is a huge part of the process for me.
I think patience probably builds a little bit of a safety net also because you get to see the things that are out there. Yeah. We talked about that 95% of purchases being emotional, and certainly that's with houses too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't tell you how many buyers come in after looking on the internet for months at homes, and they step in and they think they're going to go out there and find a home, but we end up spending months looking for the right home. But it is always a good experience because they have market education at that point. So when they pull the trigger on a home, they say, I want to buy that home, they now know that prices, where it is price-wise, the condition, the location, all these things just make them a much more educated buyer, and it's just a much safer purchase for them.
And when people are trying to educate themselves making these safe purchases, isn't there kind of a lot more than just the financial safety of it? I mean, what are some of the other aspects of a safe purchase for somebody?
Well, the financial side of it, of course, is price, but you want to be smart about location, condition, and also, speaking about the process in general. This is kind of an expectation thing, but just getting to a successful close can be a very frustrating process for a buyer as well.
I mean, and that has to do, I mean, you got to be able to want the house, right? I mean, because it can be very tumultuous. So you're navigating a lot of roads. And I guess it gives people a decent amount of time for buyer's remorse, doesn't it? More than maybe in the past. Because even though most people have this 30-day close, which is still pretty standard, we can do it. But, when you start looking at that, it's maybe taken longer to find the perfect house. So you kind of have to have your ducks in a row and make sure that closing process is set up and safe for your emotional needs, your kids' needs, getting to the schools that you need to get into. I mean, there's so many different pieces.
Yeah, I think what trips up a lot of buyers is just that it is, yes, a buyer's market, and they do have a lot of power, but they do not possess all the power. The seller of the home still has a lot of power, and it's going to make it for somewhat of a difficult process at times. But again, this should not scare any buyers out there, because if you have the money, if you have the down payment, if you have a job, and you need a house, this is the time to do it. But it will be difficult.
And especially if you're going to be there a few years. I mean, I don't want to discount the fact that if you're thinking about moving in a year or two, probably not the time to do it.
No, and this is another talking point that's really important for buyers to understand. Really, in this economy, I say that if you're not going to be prepared to stay in this home for 5 years, that's probably not a safe purchase, and you probably should not be purchasing right now. So
we've kind of heard different years, and we've heard 5 years, 10 years, 7 years, and it's very interesting, these numbers that are brought up as people try to figure out how long it's going to take.
Yeah, I wish I had that magic answer.
Yeah, we just need a crystal ball, and
Absolutely.
And then hey,
yeah,
you could have bought Apple a couple of years back too, right?
Well, I did, didn't you?
Yeah, tons of it. George Beasley here with residentialseattle.com. George, we have about a minute before we go to break. Talk about people who are maybe paying more than list price to get that house that you want.
Excellent point. And this is a really hot topic for me, because I run into this often. Of course, working in all the best neighborhoods in Seattle, some of these pop up because you have just a rash of overpriced homes, short sales, poor condition foreclosures, and then all of a sudden this little gem pops up on the market, and it's priced right, it's in great condition, it shows well, it's in a great neighborhood, and I'm not the only agent that's going to see it. It's going to be seen by everybody. And buyers will pounce on this home and create a situation that makes a buyer today feel uncomfortable. And it's going to feel like, am I doing the right thing? Am I making a safe purchase here? Am I overextending myself? Am I paying too much for this home? I won't let anybody do that, first of all. But it does make buyers uncomfortable. But when those homes hit, they're going to be competitive. You may have to write a multiple offer situation. It's not going to make them feel comfortable. It is just a necessary thing in this market.
Well, if you've taken the time to prepare and know what all of your options are, and then you can take a safe approach to maybe making that offer, and it may be uncomfortable, ultimately I think it can be a good decision.
It's a great decision, particularly if you have spent the time learning the market.
Well, George, thanks so much for joining us again. George Beasley with residentialseattle.com.